Welcome to the Ad Nauseam Podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, Ad Nauseam listeners. We're so glad that you have joined us today on May 5, 2021. How are you, Jeff?
I'm doing all right. How you doing, Dave?
You know, I'm a little perplexed, I got to tell you.
Yeah, on second thought, I'm not doing that great.
So what's the source of my perplexity, you ask?
Yes. What is the source of your perplexity?
Well, we had this wonderful episode that we were going to release this week, you remember?
I do. What happened to it? Why aren't we releasing it?
Well, episode 35, as it was going to be, with the fabulous Dr. Michael Fontaine of Cornell University.
Yeah.
How to tell a joke.
Right.
A funny thing happened on the way to the audio recording.
Yeah, it turned out to be actually not all that funny.
No, not good at all.
No.
Well, it was a brilliant interview, not on our part, but Fontaine was he was firing on all cylinders.
Oh man, he was snapping and popping left
That's
and right.
We had, what did we have? We had some Terrence in there, some Plautus. There was a Ronald Reagan and a Donald Trump obscure, or concealed reference, you might say.
Yep.
And yet the audio recording went sour.
Oh, it was horrible.
We had echoes and reverb. And the wonderful Mishka, she worked so hard to bring it into line with our high standards. What could she do?
Even Mishka,
that's right.
You cannot draw blood from a stone.
I thought it was you can't get blood from a turnip.
You couldn't get blood out of anything with this episode. It was brutal.
The raw footage, you might say,
yes,
that we handed her was just too weak because we had some technical peccadillos here in the vomitorium.
Yeah. So we're doing our audience a favor by not releasing this. Yes.
Suppressing that. We dragged this out a little far, didn't we?
We did. It was great stuff, but you're never going to hear it.
You're never going to hear it. Actually, we're going to get Mike Fontaine back. That's our hope. I'm not saying we're going to promise that to the audience, but that is our sincere intention.
Yeah.
And so, Jeff, we didn't want to just leave a big, dull spot in the listener's week, did we?
We didn't. In fact, I've gotten a few messages already saying, hey, what? No podcast this week?
Where's the episode?
Where's the episode?
When is it going to drop?
Right. People were nervous and worried.
I know.
Scared. Even.
I know.
Yes.
The problem is it dropped and it shattered into pieces.
That's right.
So we rushed into the vomitorium.
Yes.
Right?
Emergency session.
Yeah. The big AN spotlight went out into the atmosphere and shone up on the clouds.
Like the bat signal, right?
Right.
Yep.
That's where I'm going. You jumped in your, Honda Odyssey?
My Civic tonight. I had to go even faster.
Wow.
Yes.
I jumped in my Ford F-150. We raced to the vomitorium to release this special episode. But we're not calling it an episode, are we?
Well, I guess not. I mean, maybe we'll decide after this is done.
Come on, Jeff. Before we went on the air, you were adamant this is not an episode.
It is not. I know, but now everything's, now that we're live and on air, I'm rethinking everything.
Okay.
So this may or may not be an episode.
We could call it a side dish.
A side dish
to keep the gustatory theme vibrant.
Yeah. Right. But we got to see how this goes. We're flying by the seat of our pants here.
That's right. We're out on a limb, you might say.
Yes, and other metaphors.
Yeah, additional risky metaphors.
Yes.
So as we get into it this evening, what is it that we have decided to do, Dr. Jeffrey T. Winkle?
Well, we're going to talk to our audience about the top reasons why they might study Greek or Latin.
It is T, right?
T?
Yes. Jeffrey T. Winkle?
It is T, yes.
All right, thanks.
Right.
Yeah, the top reasons, we've got 11 or 9 or 10.
Somewhere in that area. Yeah. This is something that you and I actually wrote together.
We did.
A number of years ago.
It was an early collaboration, pre-Ad Nauseam.
Yes, long time ago.
And we put it together, about 6-7 years ago.
Yeah, you dug this up. I had completely forgotten about this.
Deep in the archive.
Yep.
We put it together because we were trying to attract current and prospective
yes,
Calvin students into the study of the Greek and Latin languages.
Yes, it's all coming back to me.
Yes, so modeled after the top 10 list that would be on David Letterman.
Exactly.
And so here they go. So let's get right into it. Number one reason of the top 10. Now hold on a minute.
What?
I'm having second thoughts.
What are you thinking?
Are we supposed to be counting down? Isn't that how it usually goes?
You start with 10 and go down. That's how Letterman would do it.
So we messed this up too, right?
Right. Yeah. Maybe that's why this flyer didn't work so well 5 or 6 years ago. Right. So you want to start there and say this is number 10?
I think they got funnier as they went, though, or at least less offensive. Let's say that.
Okay.
All right. Number 1.
Yeah.
Latin is the original Romance language. Without romance, the human species cannot be propagated.
That's right. It's essential to the survival of the species.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
I made a comment today in my Latin 102 course, and based on the masked responses of my masked students,
Yes.
it hit its mark a little bit.
Okay.
We were talking about what it was. It was probably the Latin word liber. Right? So liber means book. But as everybody knows, liber means child or free person. Now, it gets a little bit complicated here because Spanish has libro, right? If you've ever studied Spanish before, you know libro means book. So it just leads to confusion. And I said the problem here is that Spanish is Latin's ugly daughter, the mother tongue. And that seemed to get a kind of reaction.
Like a bristly reaction?
No, they laughed.
They laughed,
They chuckled. You know, their grade depended on it.
Yeah,
So,
gotcha. Right.
you know what it's like. You teach to a masked audience for 2 semesters. You get a little bit desperate.
You do. Yep.
Let's get something out of it.
I end up just kind of imagining and pretending that there are positive smiles and chuckles from behind the mask.
You can
right?
see there's got to be something behind that.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
No. Spanish is not Latin's ugly daughter. Neither is French or Italian or the other Romance languages.
Right.
They all have their place. How about number 2?
Number 2, after studying classics, you will be able to say it's Greek to me, except you're referring to something you actually understand quite well. Right?
Now I have to pause here.
Yes.
And I have to pick a bone with you here.
Why?
Well, how many times have we heard, it's Greek to me, when you tell people that you study classics?
It's awful.
It's awful.
It is.
Constant refrain.
Right. When I've taught Greek, I've often started the first class that's saying they can use that joke once.
And that's it.
And that's it. We bury it.
There's a statute of limitations on it, you might say.
That's right. Yeah. Now as I'm looking at this is from. I mean, the quote is from Julius Caesar. Right?
It is.
But I'm forgetting the context of that quote.
I think it's Casca who says it.
Okay.
Now,
why does he say it?
Because Cicero is walking down to the forum and he says some, smart alecky remark, as Cicero was wont to do.
Right.
And somebody says, what did he say? What did he say? And I believe it's Casca. You can all go scurrying to Wikipedia and find out. Who says, I don't know what he said. It's all Greek to me.
At which point the audience would have just lost it.
They
right?
would have.
They would have, yeah.
Speaking of smart alecky remarks,
Yep.
It's not a statue of limitations.
No,
it's a statute.
Statute, right? It's in a sculpture of limitations, as Jerry Seinfeld once said.
Why didn't you correct me?
I'm so used to hearing it the wrong way, it just washes over me.
You're too nice.
Yeah.
That's a bold-faced lie is what that is. Which is also
Bald.
wrong. It's a bald. Okay.
All right.
Number 3.
Number 3, you read it.
Okay. Medusa, Achilles, and Percy Jackson. 3 people who have never been in my kitchen. But they live and breathe in the pages of classical myth, and learning Greek or Latin will help you to become close friends.
This one also...
Cultural reference.
Yes, but it's also... It's getting kind of stale for me already.
No.
So, when I have students do myth papers, and often a topic they can choose is to look at a modern myth and see how it interprets the ancient world. And if I get one more paper... about
Percy
Jackson, I'm going to scream. Or Disney's Hercules.
I'm with you on the Disney Hercules.
Yeah.
But I can't go down that road with Percy Jackson.
I love Percy Jackson.
Well, I'm indifferent to him. But here's why I can't go down that road.
Okay.
Because of the 34 students in my classical lit course right now, I would guess easily 3/4 of them are in the class because of Rick Riordan and Percy Jackson.
Right.
And in fact, another member of the Noe family has threatened to come on this podcast and school us in the ways of Percy Jackson.
That's a serious threat.
Well, she knows the entire corpus,
Yeah.
quite well. But did you get the reference in this? 3 people who have never been in my kitchen?
What's
Does the name Cliff Clavin mean anything to you, Jeff Winkle?
that's a Cheers reference.
Yes.
I was never a huge fan of that show.
Okay.
But
Probably wise.
That's something from that show.
So Cliff Clavin, John Ratzenberger
Yes.
is the actor, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Who later was in Toy Story.
Right. He voices all kinds of characters in those Pixar
Yes,
movies.
he does,
Yes.
quite impressively. John Ratzenberger, Cliff Clavin, the postman, he was on Jeopardy. And it was Final Jeopardy. And the answer was 3 different persons, and the question was, what 3 people have never been in my kitchen? And so then he fought with Alex Trebek that this is correct. These 3 people have never been in my kitchen, therefore it fits. And of course, it was a losing appeal.
It was losing appeal, and he went down.
He went down.
In flames in Final Jeopardy. Gotcha.
So Medusa, Achilles, Percy Jackson.
Yeah.
They live and breathe in the pages of classical myth. Learning Greek or Latin will help you to become close friends.
Yes.
How about number 4?
Pause. You
Yes.
said all those Wonderful, influential things about Rick Riordan, but yet you are indifferent to Percy
I have
Jackson.
never read one of the books. I have
see.
never seen one of the movies.
I see, but you can see the value in this.
Oh, it has. It's amazing.
Okay.
Frankly, if I'm going to be real honest
Yes.
with the audience, which, after 34 episodes, it's probably time, I'm envious
Envious.
of Mr. Riordan.
You should pick up one of the books.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Would that make me more envious?
I think.
Why didn't I think to do that?
I see. Yeah.
What a brilliant idea.
Right.
Contextualize these ancient myths in a kind of a teenage setting. I understand that's what's going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Now I think he's doing it with Egyptian mythology. now.
Probably Norse is next.
He's got all kinds of things to pick from.
Yep.
He found his niche, and he's going down that road. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm envious. It's very admirable. And, the popularizers, folks like you and I, with PhDs in classics and our stuffy tweed jackets.
So
with the
tweedy.
leather patches and the pipes stuck in the pockets and so forth.
Right.
The little green lampshades on our lamps on our desks covered.
And don't forget the must. So much mustiness.
There's a lot of it, right?
Yeah.
We oftentimes put down the popularizers, but let's be honest, where would we be without them?
I don't think I've ever put down the popularizers.
No, you haven't?
You haven't really gone there. You've always been in favor of trying to find a way to get this stuff. I mean, what are we doing here?
Play along,
right?
Jeff. I'm trying to fill the time.
All right.
Some put down popularizers.
Some
we
sneer.
never have.
Some sneer. There's no room for sneering.
Yeah,
Right.
we are trying to popularize. Okay. Number 4. Am I reading number 4?
I think I'm reading number 4.
Oh, let's hear it.
Number 4. The study of Greek and Latin is not just the study of language. It's an all-access pass into a myriad of disciplines like history, philosophy, archaeology, drama, mythology, religion, medicine, and hermeneutics, just to name a few.
Well, that's impressive.
Yeah.
That's a long list. So it's not merely the study of language, but an all-access pass.
Yes. It's like it's a classics course, a language course it's like the ultimate humanities course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's and that's what I like to impress upon my students here when I teach, even like a classic mythology, when I taught the languages.
Maybe a lit course.
A lit course, it's everything. It's
Right.
everything. It's the field is huge.
So it's like when you go to Disney World, something I haven't done in a long time.
Which I've never done.
Never been to Disney
I've never
World.
been to. I went to Disney. No, what's the one in California? That's Land.
Disneyland.
And it's the World in Florida. I've been to
Right.
Disneyland.
Okay.
Which, as I understand, is the less impressive one.
I don't know. I've
Yeah.
been to Disney World twice. The last time was when I was 10 years old. So it
Oh,
was
okay.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
But as I understand, if you get the all access pass,
Yeah.
you can go to Disney World itself, Princess Village,
You can go to
Epcot.
Disaster Land.
Yes.
Right.
Dumbo's Stable.
Something right. Exactly right.
I don't know what all the different-
log flume. I think there's a flume.
right.
Yeah. Right.
All those different places. So classics is like that.
Yeah.
You slide your card into Greek and Latin, and you get what? You get history with Thucydides. You get comedy with Aristophanes. You got it.
Plautus. Yes.
You got it all.
You got it all.
Serious philosophy. In fact, this is how I got into classics.
What was your gateway drug?
My gateway drug was John Calvin and John Milton.
Oh wow.
Yeah, 2 Johns that go together, right?
Yeah.
So the footnotes in Calvin's Institutes, all Greek and Latin. I didn't understand what was going on. Then I get to John Milton, and he's talking about Comus this and, all these different muses and such. I didn't understand any of it. So
Yeah.
I thought, I really got to go back to the beginning, ab initio,
Yeah.
and learn a few things if I can appreciate this stuff.
Right.
So that was kind of how I got in.
So you weren't as a young kid kind of
no.
geeked out in mythology? Or
No,
anything?
I wasn't really exposed to that.
Wow.
I told you that I read the Sesame Street version of Odysseus.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And I thought it was Bert dressed up as Penelope.
That's right. I forgot about Penelope.
I
Right.
thought, well, who's this Penelope? And that was the extent of my exposure to classics.
Wow.
So very, very late, I backed into it.
Gotcha.
And, now I'm stuck. So
Yeah. Yeah.
And did you have a gateway drug, so to speak?
Oh, my parents bought me a Dowlaire's mythology book when I was 7, and I was hooked. And I saw that horrible / wonderful Clash of the Titans, the 1981.
Oh yeah, with the claymation.
Yeah. I saw that, and I thought it was the best thing I'd ever seen. So I had been obsessed with mythology and carried that on in very nerdy ways well into my teens. And so,
You nerdy.
I know, hard to believe, isn't it?
Yeah. So this list of ologies and osophies in this one, in my classical lit course now, I told them this is how the class is going to go, and we haven't read the evaluations yet. So this could be a total disaster.
Okay.
But I said we're going to start with geography. We're going to move to chronology, then history, then philosophy, and then theology. So we're going to deal with those 5, right?
Okay.
We're going to look at the lay of the land, sequence of events, the peoples, kind of what they were thinking, and then what does it mean in terms of gods and men, right?
Yeah.
How the gods interact with men and women.
Yeah. Geography.
Yeah, you like the geography?
I've always liked those geography as destiny arguments.
I do too.
Yeah.
They're very compelling.
Right.
So, each student in the Classics 211, if you're listening, this constitutes a shout out, right? I got them a box of crayons and a ruler and some construction paper. And
Nice. Craft time.
yeah, they drew their own map. And I'm just making that stuff up.
Oh.
So what's the next one on the list?
I think you're reading, aren't you?
Is it number
number 5?
And I think we have different lists. So yours begins when you go to medical school?
Yes.
Okay. That says 6 on my list.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
When you go to medical school and are earning extra money via appendectomies, you can say to your patients, did you know that appendix is a Latin word? It means something extra that you don't really need. That's why I'm taking it out. Now stop squirming.
That comes in very handy.
It does.
You want to put people at ease, right? I also just like the idea of a med school student kind of moonlighting as an appendectomist,
Appendectomologist.
for some malt shop money.
Right.
Yeah.
Someone's got to take it out.
That's right.
Now, this one was actually born out of a little bit of an autobiographical element.
Do tell.
Well, after one of our children was born, the attending physician said, so what do you study, What are you doing here? I'm just the dad, right? Leave me alone.
Yeah.
No, what do you do for a living? I teach Latin. He starts quoting to me the Aeneid.
Seriously?
Yeah, he did. And so he knows Latin. And this has happened to me several times during my life, not with doctors, but in other settings. The guy who inspected our house, I may have told this story on air already. He's inspecting our house, and what do you do for a living? I teach Latin, you say with that kind of sheepish, ashamed.
Yeah.
I do something, that most people don't think is that important. Oh, he said, well, I used to read Julius Caesar. And he starts quoting from, Omnis Gallia and Tres Partes Divisa Est and so forth.
Wow.
They just come out of the woodwork, right?
Man. I think that's happened to me maybe once.
You need to sell your house or have another baby. That's
That's the key?
that's the key.
I usually just get what are you going to do with that? You know that, right?
And you just say, hey, it's all Greek to me.
That's right.
So what's the next one we got here?
Let's see, number 6.
Number 6. You're going to read this
I'll
one.
read this, yes. According to the Princeton Review, people who study Greek and Latin are 35 times more likely to become billionaires.
Wow.
Well, that's not true.
Okay.
But they did say this. Students who major or double major in classics have a better success rate getting into medical school than do students who concentrate solely in biology, microbiology, and other ologies.
Ah, really?
Yes, in the sciences.
Yeah. So these other branches of science, if you just stick with biology, microbiology, or something else, you don't have as good a chance of getting into med school.
Yeah.
I'm just repeating it.
Yeah.
As if you combine that with a double major in classics.
That's right. This is something that I've tried to press upon my students with not
Like
a whole
with-
lot of success
Like
yet.
with a stick or a plunger or what?
Yeah, a plunger. I haven't gone electric yet.
Okay.
But gently say, hey, why not consider a second major I think this is really true, and I think that would be just a really kind of cool way to go. But I don't think a lot of students, in my experience, really come to college thinking along those lines, right?
No,
they're on a track and they want to
You're
follow
right.
that track.
That requires a really long-term view. So I was just asked this question a few days ago, one
Okay.
related to this by a friend of mine. He said, hey, Dr. Noe, if I want to be a dentist, do you think I should take a class should I take Latin if I want to be a dentist? I said, well, it depends on what you want to do with it. If you're just trying to learn dental terminology, then no, I wouldn't take Latin. Just buy yourself a good book, Greco-Roman medical terminology.
Yeah.
Read the book.
Yeah.
When I was a younger professor, I would have said, oh, yeah, you got to take Latin because that's the the best, most organic, and deepest way to learn these terms. It's still probably true, but it's not really practical for most people.
Yeah.
And the question is a practical question. So I have to address it differently. So I say, no, just buy the book on medical terminology. But if after you purchase your third Mercedes as a dentist or an orthodontist, you don't want to spend all your time with Netflix and golf, well, then take up Latin so you can, enrich your free time.
Yeah. So you say come to it later?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could take it now, right? But come to it for a non-pragmatic reason.
Gotcha.
So this goes back to episode number 1, Classics as a Way of Life.
Right.
Right? If you come to the study of Greek and Latin for pragmatic reasons, you'll be quickly disappointed.
Yeah.
Because there's not really that much there, honestly.
It's what shows up in the brochures. There's always, this will boost your SAT scores, right?
That's probably true,
well,
but there's faster ways to do that.
Right, exactly right. Yeah.
Caffeine pills, I don't know.
We need more curious, interesting people.
Absolutely.
And this is a great way to do that.
That's right.
Yeah. How about number 7? You got number 7 there?
Yeah, I do. Thanks to Alexander. That's where we're going with this? All right. Thanks to Alexander. That is Alexander the Great. You want a bad dad joke here?
Yeah.
Everybody's heard it. What do Alexander the Great and Smokey the Bear have in common?
I have no idea.
Same middle name. Thanks to Alexander's eastward marauding, the New Testament was written in Greek. Greek philosophers, poets, and gods stalk its pages. In fact, the book of Acts is filled with references to various gods. Castor and Pollux show up in the book of Acts. Did you know that? Zeus and Hermes show up in the book of Acts. There are quotations from Menander. There are quotations from Aratus, his Phenomena, all over the place. So wouldn't it be nice to read the New Testament as it came from the minds and the mouths of Peter, Paul, and company?
Yes, indeed. And there's, again, mentioning Alexander the Great, there's that connection to that larger context of history.
Right.
It answers the question, why is the New Testament, why is Paul writing in Greek? Mm-hmm. Why is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John writing in Greek?
And does it matter? Right? I mean, it matters. So I try to make this argument over and over, right? If you're a Christian, if you're a theist, right, and you want to know some, and not all of our listeners are, we want a broad audience, but for those who are, if no one in the Christian community knows about the classics, then all of us are impoverished, right?
Yeah.
Because this literature of the New Testament, it was written at a specific point in time.
Yeah.
Into that Greco-Roman milieu.
Exactly. And then not to mention just the nuance of the language itself. Right. I find that a lot of my students come in with this idea that language is math. Mm-hmm. Right. So this word in this language means this word in the other language.
Absolutely.
And with little kind of appreciation for the loss that happens in translation, right? So,
I can give you an example of that. I was just reading Philippians chapter 1 with my Greek 203 class. We're reading some New Testament. Paul uses this noun, I think I can remember it, Erin, Tain Erin, which is Eris, the goddess of discord.
Strife,
Yes, exactly. So in this verse, he uses Tain Erin, and then later in the same verse, he uses a compound of it. I think it's erytheos in the genitive. Well, the two words are obviously their cognates, right? One means strife. Erytheos means a different kind of strife or quarreling. So in class, I'm thinking, I wonder how Jerome translated this.
Yeah.
Right. This happens to me a lot. If I'm at the gas station, I wonder how Jerome would have pumped this fuel. Right.
Yeah.
I wonder how Jerome. Maybe there's no potential in this line of.
Well, the same thing happens to me, but it's usually at Taco Bell.
Nice save. Wendell. Nice save. So I looked it up, and Jerome translates both words with contentio, contention, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, well, why did Jerome do that, right? It's two different words, but he uses the same Latin word. Well, maybe it's because there isn't another one that he could have pulled out to approximate that second usage.
Or he was just getting kind of sleepy and bored at that point, and he just, that's all I got.
That could be too.
Yeah.
I try to assume the best of Jerome, but he lived in a cave.
He was a cranky guy.
He was quite cranky.
Yeah.
He lived in a cave in a desert spot, so what are you going to do?
Another kind of example on those lines, just last week I was teaching in a couple of high school classes where my wife teaches.
Excellent.
Teacher is doing the Odyssey and said, will you come in and talk about it?
Oh, perfect.
So
that's like handing you a,
it was great. It was great.
You a softball.
But I taught him a little Greek, did the first line.
Excellent.
And that word palutropos.
Absolutely.
Right? And of course, usually when you look at English translations, usually the translator would choose something like clever. Right? The word means like much turning, much toss.
Exactly.
But of course, the word in Greek, it can mean clever and cunning, but it can also mean literally tossed about.
That's right.
And so when you translate in English, you have to make a choice, and once you make that choice, you lose something.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, the valence, the nuance is missing.
Missing.
That's a great example. Well, we have a few more, right? But
Yeah.
we got to hear from our sponsors.
We do, before we get in too deep. Yep.
Exactly.
This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by Hackett Publishing. Since 1972, Hackett Publishing has been setting the standard for affordable, high-quality translations in the field of classics, as well as many other areas of the humanities. Dave, what do you like about what Hackett has to offer?
Well, Jeff, Hackett has an enormous and growing collection of hundreds of titles. They cover ancient history, literature, philosophy, poli-sci, and classical language study. Hackett editions are ideal for both classroom use and general readership, offering affordable, up-to-date, modern translations, as well as editions of classic works with helpful scholarly notes, annotations, and introductions. What's not to like?
What's not to like? I love their illustrations and photographs they put on their covers. They're often very clever. They'll take a contemporary or near contemporary photo and match it thematically with an ancient work. It's just really, really well done.
Like the moon landing, right?
Yes, for the Odyssey.
Yes,
yeah.
or the men arriving on the beaches of Normandy.
For the Iliad.
Yeah, and you brought this to my attention. Elvis on the cover of Euripides' Bacchae.
That's my favorite.
Yes.
This is perfect.
It's really well chosen, well done.
Yep. So, Dave, what can our listeners get by listening to this podcast? What's on tap?
Well, they can get, of course, an hour of wonderful and extraordinary entertainment. Is that what you're talking about?
No, that's a given. How can they benefit by going to hackettpublishing.com?
Well, in addition to the self-serving hyperbole offered up by the guests,
Yes?
they can go to hackettpublishing.com, Hackett. We trust you can spell publishing, and they can receive 20% off on any order, as well as free shipping. The generous folks at Hackett, who so graciously support this podcast, they're going to give you 20% off and free shipping on any order. So go to Hackett, enter AN2021 in the box which asks for the coupon code at checkout. It's a great deal.
You won't regret it.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Racial Coffee. Ladies and gentlemen, listen closely, please. Mark Helweg and his team, based in Portland, Oregon, have solved not only your brew-based problems, how to get a good cup of coffee, but your aesthetic appliance problems. Now, why spend $4 to $6 on coffee that you purchased in a drive-thru from one of those national brands when you can get this better coffee at home? Not only do you get better coffee from the Ratio 6 or its big brother, the 8, these beautiful automatic pour-over machines, but you also get something that's beautiful as it sits on your counter. It's not one of those ugly plastic appliances, right, Jeff?
No, it's a centerpiece is what it is. Yeah, the light from the heavens open up and shine on this every morning when I walk into the kitchen.
And you bring in kids from the neighborhood, right? They're riding by on their bicycle. Hey, kid, come in here and check out my coffee machine.
That at first, and now they come of their own volition.
Right, they make like a coffee pilgrimage.
They do.
Let's go see Mr. Winkle's Ratio 6.
Exactly. Let's get into the
Okay,
details here.
all
So
right.
what the Ratio does.
All right, let's hear it.
It sends 200-degree Fahrenheit water soaring through its metallic veins, no plastic in this creature at all, down into the cone filled with freshly ground Ad Astra beans. It then sits in the bloom stage for a few minutes, allowing all of the harsh CO2 to float lazily off into the biosphere. And then it is deposited in the hand-blown borosilicate glass or stainless steel carafe. No bitterness, no burned flavor, just consistent, sweet coffee.
So well said, Jeff.
Yes.
And it gets rid of the brackish tang, right?
There's no brackish tang.
Okay.
So if you've got a folk moot coming up,
Yep.
yeah, brew up 8 to 12 cups.
In the Ratio 6 or the Ratio 8.
Your choice.
Okay. Listen up, Coffophiles. Go to ratiocoffee.com, RATIO, ratiocoffee.com right now and get a 15% exclusive discount on the Ratio 6. You're going to want to enter the special coupon code ANCO for 15% off. That's ANCO, ratiocoffee.com.
Bring the brew to you. This week's episode is also brought to you by Ad Astra Coffee, the coffee that takes you to the stars without having to go through all that per aspera stuff.
Very nice. So Patrick Whalen and his team down in Hillsdale, Michigan, they brew some of the best beans, 80% or better on the coffee grading scale.
That's very good, isn't it?
It is, I think so. And they have this poetry series. You've got Wordsworth, Rilke, and other great poets printed right on the bag. you drink some coffee, you read some poetry, you check out Winkle's haiku from a few weeks back.
That's right, yeah.
Right.
I won't bring it up now. You go back. Go check it out, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they got Tenebris. What else?
Tenebris was the Las Lajas.
Yeah, the Micro Lot.
The Micro Lot, yeah.
Right. The Femenino from Guatemala.
That's right, yeah.
A whole array of wonderfully roasted, delicious coffee beans.
The Tenebris is still my favorite.
It is mine too.
Yep.
Removes the fog in the morning.
Exactly. Good stuff.
So what do our listeners have to do to score some of this wonderful coffee?
Ad Nauseats, all you have to do is go to adastraroasters.com. Ad Astra is ADASTRA roasters.com. Go and check out their delicious high-quality offerings, and you can get a special 10% off by entering the code ANAA, and you can also sign up for their monthly subscriptions.
Check it out, adastraroasters.com.
All right, so back to the list here. Number 8. Studying Latin puts you in the ranks of some very famous and successful people, including Count Dooku himself.
Oh, the late Christopher Lee.
Yes, who was also Saruman.
That's right.
In Lord of the Rings.
I believe he's 6'9", something like that.
Huge guy, right? Yes. He passed away not that long ago.
Not that long ago. So Count Dooku.
Yes, and I was just watching a old-timey horror film the other night. Have you heard of The Wicker Man?
No, I haven't.
The original Wicker Man. Christopher Lee plays the bad guy.
Is he made out of wicker?
It's a very bizarre, strange one. I can't recommend it.
Okay.
But he's good. He's good in there. Eric Blair, better known to the world as George, don't call me Dooku, Orwell.
George Orwell.
Yes,
right.
He also had a background in classics. And you actually have a quote from Orwell talking about his background, right?
I do, because I just happened to remember this, and then I looked it up. It's from an article entitled George Orwell and the Classics, from Classical and Modern Literature, 2005, written by a man named Paul Burton. Quote, classically trained at St. Cyprian's and Eton, George Orwell was deeply immersed in the classical tradition. His intellectual relationship to that tradition, however, was never easy or comfortable. It is, in fact, one of the few unresolved paradoxes of Orwell's intellectual life that he both disparaged classics as a snobbish and useless relic of a more benighted age, but could never quite free himself from its allure. The ambivalence, a striking sense of the intellectuals of his generation, Orwell was unsurpassed in his capacity for self-criticism. He would just go around and say, hey, I'm just making this up, but I am the most self-critical. As a writer, it has recently been said, Orwell was forever taking his own temperature. He's anticipating the COVID era.
Right.
But as several documents only recently made available attest, Orwell remained ambivalent about his classical heritage even on his deathbed. At some point in 1948, he drew up a list of Latin words and phrases to be purged from English usage altogether. But a short time later, took deep offense at what he characterized as a blasphemous advertisement for Woolsey socks.
Woolsey socks?
Woolsey socks. The advertisement was fit for the gods, which depicts a god of the Greco-Roman type wearing Woolsey's patented duo shrunk undergarment.
And old George didn't like this?
He didn't like this.
Oh.
So this deep ambivalence.
Wow. I read an Orwell biography a few years ago.
Really?
Of a deeply conflicted guy. And also a hypochondriac. He died young. I want to say he was only like 40 when he died.
I had no idea.
But constantly second guessing himself. I mean, clearly brilliant. But kind of all over the map in terms of his the way he felt about himself, his background. That's really, I did not know that about. He was so conflicted about his his training.
We can't really turn this into an episode about George Orwell. I mean, we could, because it's fascinating. Let me just share one little more quote here from this article. It was here, meaning at Eton, that with a mixture of prodding and corporal punishment, quote, boys were crammed with learning as cynically as a goose is crammed for Christmas.
Oh, my.
In preparation for spectacular academic careers at places like Eton, where Blair was indeed eventually sent and would matriculate as a classical generalist, et cetera, et cetera.
Interesting. Well, I got to say, I'm disappointed about his reaction to that socks ad.
It's good. Fit for the gods.
Exactly, right. I'm a great admirer of a lot of what Orwell wrote.
I am too.
But not a funny guy. Not a funny guy.
How do you mean?
I mean, from his writing, I don't detect that this is a guy who had any real sense of humor at all. Deeply serious.
If you can write a line like, we're all equal, comrade, but some of us are more equal than others.
But that's darkly funny. Very dark.
Coming out of the mouth of a pig. That's hilarious.
I can see it kind of in claymation.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Pixar Animal Farm.
Wallace and Gromit
Yeah, exactly.
have never done Animal Farm.
They should do Animal Farm, right.
So,
Yeah.
Count Dooku, just to get back to the quote.
Yeah.
Eric Blair, that is George Dooku Orwell.
Yes. We also have C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, right? And I think anybody who has, even a little bit of background in the classics will see that stuff jumping out of the page of the Narnia books and Lord of the Rings.
Definitely.
Without a doubt, right?
Yeah, one of my students in one of my classes, who will go unnamed, nomine deleto, he was wearing a T-shirt the other day, which was a riff on Mount Rushmore. But as I looked closely at this T-shirt, I noticed that none of the characters were the presidents. One of them resembled Roosevelt a little bit, so I said, "Is that Roosevelt?" He said, "No, this is Chesterton, Tolkien, Lewis," and then I could see Lewis, and I think George Herbert, maybe?
George Herbert.
I think so.
Seems kind of the odd one out in that.
I could have that.
That
maybe
group before.
McDonald. Could it be George McDonald?
Okay. Yeah. I don't. Yeah.
I don't know. It's beyond me. So I said to this student, "Did anyone else comment on this T-shirt?" Because of evening class. Anyone else comment on this T-shirt all day long? No. He said nobody noticed.
Really?
So I wonder, is that ignorance of American presidents, or ignorance of English literary luminaries, or just indifference to T-shirts?
Indifference to T-shirts.
That's
right.
probably it.
Probably right. Yeah.
So after Tolkien, what do we have?
We got Tolkien. We have getting more to the present day. Mark Zuckerberg.
Yes.
Of Facebook fame.
Story goes that he wrote on his Harvard application, when it said, "Do you speak any other languages?" He said Latin.
Do you have any idea if Zuckerberg can actually speak Latin?
I don't know, but I think he's enamored of the Aeneid.
Really?
Yes.
Well, yeah. Well, he needs to be throwing some of that sweet Facebook cash around classics
How
departments.
do you know he hasn't?
Well, I guess I don't know.
Yeah, it hasn't come to our institutions yet, but that doesn't mean it's not out there.
Right. Well, speaking of other very famous, very wealthy people, J.K. Rowling also has a background in classics.
Who has done as much, probably, as Riordan to reanimate classics in the minds of young people.
Absolutely. I mean, all of those spells in Harry Potter are Latinate. Not all of them, but many of them.
Latinate is a good way to put it.
Yes, exactly. It's squishy. It's squishy Latinese.
I think that one of the most brilliant things that she did is when she calls the three-headed dog Fluffy. Right?
Fluffy. Yeah, exactly.
There's humor.
Right.
That's really nice.
That's good. There's some quite wonderful kind of on the sleeve references to classical literature.
Yeah, I got to see the coffee shop in Edinburgh where she used to sit when she was writing these novels.
As a kind of a young single mother, just like
struggling,
scraping by, right?
Yeah, struggling to get by. And apparently she said to the barista, "I'm going to be rich and famous someday." Yeah, sure, right.
She said that. Right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
Good for her.
Also, it's not on the written list, but speaking of wealthy Brits,
yes.
Do you know who Chris Martin is?
No.
The lead singer of Coldplay.
I think you've brought this up before.
Yes, he also was a classics major at Cambridge or Oxford. Or something.
Right. But that music came out after 1992.
You refuse to listen to it. It's
dead to me.
That's right. That's right. That's a topic for another episode.
Okay.
Dr. Seuss. I was not aware of that.
A little edgy. Yeah. I don't know exactly what his status is in the broader culture at this point, but studied classics, knew Latin.
W.E.B. Is it Du Bois or Du Bois?
It's Du Bois.
It's Du Bois, yes.
Yes, it really is.
Yeah.
I think he was the first African-American to earn a PhD from Harvard.
That's right.
A very ardent advocate of the classics.
Yes. Winston Churchill?
Of course.
Yeah.
Although I think he may have hated studying Latin more than Orwell.
Than Orwell did, right?
I think so.
No, it was Churchill. I mean, you go back this far, anybody of that class.
That's true.
They're going to be studying Greek and Latin.
That's true.
But did Churchill,
So it's not
Churchill,
unusual.
did he pursue it, further, or did he get his A levels or whatever they call it?
I
over
don't
there?
remember.
Okay.
I can't really say. Again, in the listener hate mail, we can get corrected on all of these things.
Right.
It's indisputable that Churchill's rhetorical style, the rotundity of his periods, were influenced by Cicero, obviously.
Yes.
I like to tell my students that from what I've read, Churchill spent 1 hour for every minute of speech making, right? So if he was giving a 30-minute speech, it took him 30 hours to compose it.
Oh, my, yeah.
And, that really turned the tide of war.
Right. Impressive man. Across the channel, we
Yes.
go to Victor Les Mis Hugo.
Yes. A child prodigy. He and his younger brother, I think it was his younger brother, were compelled by their mother to study Thucydides and Livy and other classical authors. That was their diet. And
Wow.
I don't think he enjoyed it very much. But if you have read, any of his novels, I've read 2, Les Mis and the other one about the Hunchback, which maybe is the Hunchback.
The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Yes.
Crammed with original Latin poetry.
Yeah.
Beautiful stuff.
Yeah. Also, not on the list, but have you ever heard that story about the American President James Garfield, who was in office a short time before he was shot?
This is unbelievable.
He could write Greek and Latin with both hands
simultaneously.
Yeah. Like Greek with the left hand, Latin with the right.
I can't eat with a fork and a knife simultaneously.
I think it's why he was shot.
That's not the bathtub guy, is it?
The bathtub guy?
Oh, no, that's Taft.
Did he die in a bathtub?
He got stuck in the
bathtub, right?
Yes. A similar rhetorical rotundity as Churchill.
Right, exactly. And then the last one on our list, but certainly not the last.
No, not at all.
Right. William Billy Shakespeare himself.
Yes.
Right. Although we don't know a lot about his background.
Well, from what I've been told, his actual knowledge of Greek and Latin wasn't very strong, but he had read a lot of Plutarch.
Yeah.
So he knew the lives of the greats.
Sure, right. And it comes out in his plays. Antony and Cleopatra. Romeo and Juliet is straight out of one of those Greek romances.
Well, and it's out of Ovid, right? It's from the Metamorphoses. It's Pyramus and Thisbe.
Right.
Story he told twice, if I'm not mistaken.
And then those stories were kind of turned into kind of syrupy soap operas in those the Greek novels that Apuleius was inspired by.
Yeah,
right?
A little known fact about Shakespeare. In fact, I guess hardly anybody would know it unless you were like me, a student of Jack Holtzmark. So one of my grad school professors, Jack Holtzmark, when he was talking about Homer's influence, he said no one has ever had as much influence on their own language as Homer, setting the tone for the entire culture. He said, except perhaps with the exception of Shakespeare. Yeah. Maybe Shakespeare's influence on English was as profound and broad as Homer's.
And both of those guys earn the title, the poet, the bard. You don't even have to say their names.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoy Shakespeare so much more than Milton.
Do you have a favorite Shakespeare play?
Oh, definitely Julius Caesar.
Really?
Yeah.
Just because of the classical milieu?
Probably.
Yeah, right.
Is that the second time we've used milieu? Yeah, there's the third in this episode.
We'll fix that in post.
Okay.
Right. I'm a Macbeth man myself.
Are you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the last one?
The last. I got nobody else on the list. Are you talking the last one?
The last reason.
The last reason. I think that's. I'm going to throw it over to you because I think you're going to read the last reason, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so this one, the rigor of the classical languages will make you a better thinker. Their position at the root of so many other languages will make you a better speaker and writer. The worlds that they open up, well, I used to say, and that's what's written here, they will make you a better human. I would probably have to qualify that a little bit now.
Okay.
I don't think they'll make you a better human. I used to be more, optimistic about the connection between education and character. I'm definitely headed in the other direction now.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
As my basic misanthropic impulses come to the surface and crowd out everything else.
Gotcha. I hear you. Yeah.
But what do you think, Winkle?
Absolutely. I would agree
Absolutely
with that.
Makes you a better person?
No. I thought you were talking about kind of just the broader point of number 9 here. No, I think as I get older, maybe this is just a function of getting older, more pessimistic about that kind of stuff, like you just said. But definitely make you a better thinker, a better writer, a better reader. I think I often would tell students when I taught Latin, especially, I tell them I never really understood how English worked until I learned Latin, and it strikes the ear so counterintuitive. Well, why not just study English? Mm-hmm. But there's something about the taking apart and putting back together of Latin that really you start to understand your own native language that much better.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's for sure.
And then that is at the root of so many other things: speaking, writing, thinking. It makes you also really good. Did you ever play Balderdash?
Oh, yes.
You have to guess the...
Yes, the made-up definition.
If you're a classicist, you can kill at that game. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's a lot of fun.
And you can irritate people to no end because 2/3 of those words in that stack of cards, Latinate or Hellenic.
Definitely.
And you can just nail it every time.
So I'm going to get a little bit topical here to try to illustrate this point.
Please do.
We'll see how this works. I was reading an editorial in the newspaper yesterday, the day before, as Wall Street Journal. I don't remember the author, but the subject was President Biden's State of the Union address, or his address to
Congress.
Yes.
Yeah, a week ago or so.
Right. And this individual, it wasn't really a political column. It was about Biden's trouble with stuttering. And this author of the article has a son who stutters too. And so he said, like his policies, don't like his policies. The man shows a lot of courage to work his way through this stuttering, which is a serious issue for many people, to deliver this speech. How this connects here is that he said, sometimes when you are acting, right, people who have trouble stuttering, but if they are in a performance of some kind, if they're playing another role, sometimes the stuttering ceases.
Yes.
And he mentioned James Earl Jones. I remember Adam Sandler, a number of other famous actors who had a serious problem with stuttering, but then it disappeared when they're playing a role.
It's also true of musicians. There's a
Yes.
famous example, the country musician Mel Tillis.
He may have been in that list.
Yes, a stutterer, but when he sang,
Came out perfect.
it came out perfect, yeah.
So the connection here is you have to step outside of your normal intellectual patterns, maybe, in order to see what you're doing.
Yeah.
So the connection between studying English, studying
Yes.
Latin, you step outside and suddenly you get some objectivity on your normal patterns.
Right. It also reminds me of some of my favorite comedians are guys like Victor Borgia, who pianist, right? And
or is that Ernest? Maybe I'm confusing him with Ernest
no,
Borgnine.
no, you're Victor Borgia, the pianist.
All right.
But I think he was Swedish. But so these
That would
comedians
explain the meatballs.
for whom English is their second language, they have a completely different view on the language, right? It's a skewed comedic view, but they notice things in the language that a native speaker just takes for granted or doesn't notice at all. So kind of coming through that different lens, it just opens up another world.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Are we out of reasons?
I think we are. That's it.
That's it. That's all the reasons there are.
There have to be more because our livelihood depends upon
That's
it.
true. That's true.
We're going to
Right.
teach Greek and Latin. There's got to be more reasons.
Maybe we'll release some later down the line.
Yeah.
Okay. All
I
right.
can come up with some more. A lot of the other reasons are not so much generic but specific, right? They're not thematic, but you can't enjoy Cicero, right, the way that I do if you can't read Latin.
Right.
You can't see the humor of Ovid if you don't read Latin.
I was also just noticing driving downtown today, just stuck at stoplights, like looking at just the architecture in downtown Grand Rapids here. Oh, there's an Ionic column.
Yeah.
There's a Corinthian acanthus leaf. There's an acroterion. It's everywhere.
Just dropping the terms.
Yes.
You're right. It's all over.
It's everywhere. Now you can spend a perfectly good life driving through Grand Rapids and never noticing any of that stuff.
Nobody spends a good life driving through Grand Rapids.
That's very true. Right. All right. Or pick your city.
Okay.
All right. There's something quite wonderful about seeing that and knowing it and understanding kind of connecting the dots.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
Yep. And the study of Greek and Latin, it's going to enrich you in that.
I think that's a good place to stop.
I think it is too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, dear listener, we're so grateful that you delayed gratification for a day. Episode didn't drop on Tuesday, but we got it out on Wednesday, May 5.
Right. So hope you're not too angry.
Yep. Another little snippet here, a little side dish. Today is the birthday of Karl Marx.
Karl Marx, yes.
A man of whom I am not a fan, but when I was researching for this episode, what happened on May 5? Karl Marx was born on this day, and he actually wrote his master's thesis in Latin.
And it was on Augustus.
That's right. This was 1835. Karl Marx on Principatis Augusti merito inter feliciores rei publicae Romanae aetates numeretur.
He wrote it in Latin.
The whole thing.
That's
Yep.
that's impressive.
It's quite good. It's decent Latin. The question is, was the reign of Augustus rightly counted among the happier times in the Roman Republic?
And the answer to that question is?
You'll have to read the treatise. But of course, it's fascinating, right? The question by Marx's time, 1835, it's nearly 1900 years old. Did Augustus, we looked at this before, right? Did Augustus initiate an actual tyranny or did he restore the Republic?
Right.
So Marx, asked this question in his master's thesis. Was it a good time to live under Augustus' reign or was it miserable? Was it unhappy? They didn't have any podcasts then, that's for sure.
For sure. And I guess, he didn't get a teaching job and he went in another direction?
That's right. And then 20th century mayhem ensued.
That's right.
As we know. So do we got to get out of here?
We do got to get out of here.
But for no particular reason.
No, nobody's coming in. Nobody's beating
coming
down
in.
the door. Right?
That running gag has run its course?
Possibly. We'll see where that goes. And I don't even think we have a gustatory parting shot tonight.
Actually, we do.
We do?
Now, we could revive the Someone's Renting the Vomitorium.
Yeah.
Actually, a friend of my daughter, who shall remain unnamed, who loves the podcast, actually asked my daughter, so is there someone really renting the vomitorium? Are they coming in? No. That's just a joke. They just made that up. It's just for fun.
Oh, I bet she was really disappointed.
She was a little disappointed.
I can imagine.
Because it was so implausible, right? The kinds of people that were clamoring to get in.
Right.
So do I have a gustatory parting shot?
I have a feeling that you do.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. This is from Kellogg.
Kellogg?
The cereal manufacturer, who said, Lego my ego. Now think of the ad executive who thought that up. They said, what shall we use? Flaffle my waffle? Flan cake my pancake? No.
Lego my ego.
Lego my ego.
That's gold.
That's cool. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
So we got some people to thank.
As always, our intrepid engineer, Mishka.
Fernando, thanks for putting this together.
Yes.
We did it a little out of order, you notice.
We did?
Right? Well, the gustatory shot didn't come last.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Because this is...
we're mixing it up.
Yeah, keeping it real.
We're loose.
We want to thank Scott Van Zen and Ken Tamplin for the great intro, outro, and bumper music.
As always, thanks, guys. Yeah.
We want to invite people to send in complaints, mostly. There'll probably be a lot for tonight. To, what are those addresses?
There's Dave at adnauseum.com. Don't forget the V. Or Jeff at adnauseum.com. Please leave a review at your favorite platform where you listen to this nonsense.
Yeah, and you might think about checking out some of our merch.
Yes.
At our website, Lurch with Merch. Get yourself a nice Ad Nauseum t-shirt. Show the world you're taking in and holding down the classics.
Yes.
It's kind of like leaving a little $5 tip underneath the wine glass at the end of the meal. And that's it for today. Thank you for listening.
Thanks a lot. See you next time.